Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. By the way, be sure to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/UNC Knowledge. Facebook.com/UNC Knowledge. You can submit questions, make comments, suggest guests. A foreign correspondent and foreign policy analyst, Michael Totten, has reported from the Middle East, the Balkans, and the Caucasus, and writes regularly for Commentary Magazine and Pajamas Media. His new book, The Road to Fatima Gate. I pronounced that correctly, Michael?
You did.
All right, excellent. Segment 1, How Come? Let me quote to you from The Road to Fatima Gate. Beirut in 2005 looked and felt like the beginning of a new Middle East. There seemed no better place to cover the region as a foreign correspondent. Beirut spring, though, did not last. All right, let's spend a moment on those few sentences. You're not affiliated with the New York Times or the Times of London. It's my understanding that you substantially support yourself as a foreign correspondent. You have your own website. You write for Commentary. Your work appears on Pajamas Media. Why are you, Michael, a foreign correspondent?
It's the best job in the world.
Simply because?
Because I get paid to write, which I've wanted to do since I was a kid. Actually, my mother tells me that I wanted to be a writer before I even remember.
Really?
When I was 4 years old, that I would draw pictures and write stories underneath the pictures, and I don't have any memory doing that. So, my entire life I've wanted to be a writer, and I love traveling. And this is the perfect combination of these two.
Okay, now why the Middle East?
Middle East is where the action is. There's always a story in the Middle East. Always has been, probably always will be. But it also becomes, it has become for me interesting on its own terms. I've spent enough time there now, that even if the rest of the world stopped being interested in the Middle East, I would continue to be interested in the Middle East.
So, sounds to me as though you're old-fashioned in the sense that you like the sound of a little gunfire off in the distance.
Not as much as people think I do, actually.
Really?
No. I have colleagues in the media who are real adrenaline junkies. And it's like any other drug. They have to get increasingly more and more brave in order to get their fix. And I can understand it and relate to it to a certain extent. And Winston Churchill is right when he said, there's nothing so exhilarating as being shot at without result. But it's not the sort of thing that I want to repeat on a regular basis.
So the attraction to the Middle East is what? With our mutual friend Christopher Hitchens. By the way, Christopher Hitchens gives you a wonderful blurb on the cover of the book. It is extremely rare, writes Hitchens, to read such an accurate account of anything to which one was oneself a witness. So with Christopher Hitchens, Iraq is the big story because all his life, in one way or another, Christopher views himself as combating the bad guys, fascism. And he sees in the old regime of Saddam Hussein a fascist regime, thugs, and he wants to take them on. Your interest isn't quite that, is it?
It's close, actually.
Is it?
I do share Christopher's hatred of totalitarian regimes. And I always have, ever since I learned about the Holocaust in 7th grade. I've had a visceral hatred and disgust for them.
Why Lebanon?
Lebanon, in 2005, during the revolution against the Syrian military occupation of the country, looked and felt like an Arab version of Berlin in 1989. That's how it looked, that's how it felt, that's what a lot of us thought it was. As it turns out, it was more like Budapest in 1956. But at the time, this was not clear.
Things looked good, but it was about to get much worse. And your prior history, so you moved back to Lebanon in '05.
Yeah.
And your prior history with the country, you'd been in and out to report. You had lived there or you had not lived there?
Well, I had visited during the Cedar Revolution in 2005.
I see.
And I knew after about 2 weeks that I was going to really miss this place when I was gone, and that I might want to come back for a longer stay.
All right. Cedar Revolution of 2005. Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri is assassinated, and soon afterwards, I'm quoting again from The Road to Fatima Gate, quote, about 1 million people in a country of just more than 4 million descended on Martyrs Square in Beirut and demanded the immediate termination of Syria's military occupation. The story captivated the world. Just go through the basics here. Why did the assassination of the prime minister lead to a quarter of the populations turning out in the streets for demanding demanding something. What was going on? Explain that.
Okay, let me first back up and talk about the demographics of the country for a second.
All right.
Think of Lebanon basically as divided into threes. Roughly 1/3 is Christian, another third is Sunni Muslim, and another third is Shia Muslim. And the politics in the country are and have always been sectarian. So Rafi Hariri was the former Sunni prime minister, and he was going to run for the prime ministership again, and he was probably going to get it. And the Syrians wanted him to be prime minister when they began their occupation in the early 90s because he was competent with the country's economics. But he grew increasingly disgruntled with the fact that he had to answer to Syria if he's the prime minister of the country. And the community that he led within the country, the Sunnis, were also increasingly disgruntled with Syria's occupation. And the Christians had been disgruntled with Syrian occupation from the very beginning. They were never gruntled.
All right.
The only group in the country that supported the Syrian occupation were the Shia Muslims. Not all of them, probably 2/3 of them, because the Syrians supported Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is a Syrian militia. And so the Christians had always been against the Syrians, and as soon as the Syrians decided they were going to assassinate the leader of the Sunni community, both the Christians and the Sunnis came out against the Syrian occupation at the same time. So 2/3 of Lebanon was openly against Damascus for the first time since Damascus came to Beirut.